Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Masood Raja, and in this brief video I will be doing what is termed the Booktube Newbie tag, and I'll be answering some of your questions, and I hope that allows you to get to know me a little better. So the first question is, why did you start this channel? Interesting. I have another very successful educational channel where I discuss books and literary theory and postcolonial theory and techniques of scholarly writing, but I was getting quite a few questions that just wanted me to introduce a book or do some book recommendations. So that's when I thought, if I do a separate booktube channel, then I can be more focused and just introduce whatever books I like and then share those introductions with a broader but also maybe a more specific audience which is only interested in knowing about books. So that's why I started this separate channel, to introduce books. So what unique things do I bring to Booktube? That's the second question. I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to think of myself as unique, but as you can see, I am way older than an average booktuber on YouTube. So I bring a lot of experience, but I also bring the experience of a literary scholar who's also a published author and who teaches literature and fiction at university level. So that gives me an experiential view of not just what constitutes a book or what's a novel, but how we teach it, how we read it, and what shapes our reading practices. So I think this unique experience kind of adds to my repertoire amongst all the other great YouTubers, and I would consider this sort of unique. The next question is, what are you excited about on this channel? So obviously, like, what I'm really excited about is that I get to introduce good books to a lot of people. And simply that as a public service where my voice kind of helps you decide, which book to read or which book to explore. And in my case, since I'll be introducing books from all over the world, which continent to explore. So I think that really excites me, this freedom to just talk about books. Another question is, why do you love reading? I mean, that's always the hardest question to answer. I started reading pretty early in my childhood. It was kind of an escape for me in the boarding school. And so reading for me is, of course, relaxing, but it's also something that I constantly need to do to keep increasing my knowledge as a scholar and a teacher. But most importantly, I think I love to read because it gives me my own space in my mind, because I know I'm reading. This is my time to experience something new, to experience good writing. These are all the things that make me love reading. What book series started you writing? I mean, we are talking about prehistoric times, but you see those volumes behind me, the brown volumes on the shelf. That is a fantasy series in Urdu called Talism Hoshruba. Someday, maybe I'll talk about it. I read it first, I think, in 4th grade in an abridged form where it was kind of simplified for children. And that launched me into a habit of reading, but also gave me the taste to read long fantasy epics. So even though I'm a literary scholar and talk about serious literary fiction, I still love fantasy. I've read all my Harry Potter books and The Wheel of Time and even the Game of Thrones. I think primarily because fantasy was what started me reading. When did you start reading? I think I've already answered this question. I mean, I started reading newspaper in 2nd grade, and then immediately after that I started reading children's book and fiction, mostly in Urdu translation. I think it wasn't until my 8th grade that I actually started reading books in English, but it was as early as that. What will be the hardest challenge to overcome for me on this channel? I think it's probably my age. If you look at me, I am way older than your average YouTuber. Now, which gives me an advantage too, that I have more experience, but on the other hand, I may not be in touch with what's happening in the public sphere, in the popular culture, in the publishing industry. So I think that would be kind of hardest for me to tackle this challenge of being older and maybe not being in sync with what is being talked about and what is being read by young people and what the other booktubers are recommending. The next question is, where do you read? So pretty much in my office, if it is serious reading and if it's a book that I'm going to be writing about. I read at home, but mostly at home I read fiction and something that's not serious. And then when there is no COVID-19, I occasionally, rather more regularly, read at my local coffee house. Right, that's my space where I take a book, get a cup of coffee, read, annotate, make notes. What kind of books do you like to read? So that's kind of a complex question for me, because I love to, of course, read literary fiction, because that is what I teach at college level. Then, since I'm also an active scholar who publishes, I read a lot of critical analysis and theory book and philosophy books. And then in my leisure time, I also, of course, read popular fiction. A lot of my Kindle books are, all the series that you can find. The last one, I think, was the Wolf Gift Chronicles. I'm still waiting for the third book. But depending on what it is for, if I'm teaching classes, of course, I read serious fiction that I'm teaching, literary fiction. If I'm working on a book, which I always am, I'm reading literary criticism, literary theory, philosophy, and then if it is just for fun and pleasure, I read some books that are, fantasy, science fiction, and any other light reading that you can just read and enjoy. So these are all the questions. I hope I answered them well enough for you. Thank you so much for welcoming me in your community, and I will be happy to add to these answers. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. And I am really, really excited about this new journey into this new genre of YouTube production and sharing ideas with you, which is closely connected to the Booktube community and the book lovers all over the world. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time, and until then, peace and love.